Hi everyone, once again welcome to Techie Academy. Today we are going to be looking at a very interesting topic and it's called Query Dependencies. And I'm going to paint a scenario that will help you understand this better. Imagine as the Power BI developer, you just get employed in a company and a series of projects has been done and you need to understand or troubleshoot the report given to you. How will you go about it? Or also think about a situation whereby there is a need for you to optimize the report given to you. And the report was just handed over to you by a previous colleague. How should you go about it? And this is where query dependencies come in. So what is query dependencies? Basically, it defines how query relates to each other. It helps you to understand how your query relate to each other, whether through reference, merge, append, source connection. And understanding this relationship is very crucial for data efficiency, transformation, and also avoiding errors such that you can be able to troubleshoot or optimize a query properly. Now, there are four key aspects of query dependencies that we need to know. The first one is direct dependencies, indirect dependencies, chain dependencies, which is the third one, and the fourth one is external dependencies. Now, let me show you how some of these things look like. I'm going to explain these four aspects, but let's delve into Power BI and see how query dependencies work. So I'm going to come to my Power Query here. Now this is a project that has been done before. Now if I click on my view and I click on query dependencies, you will see that it gives me an overview of all the tables which I have here. And then I see some arrows being connected together. Now what this simply means is that if I let me check the layout. If I check the layout to left to right, what this means is that this is the source of my data, and from these sources all other tables are being built. This is what this implies. From these sources all other tables are being built. So which means that when I create a duplicate of this data, is being picked from the source. This data is being picked from the source, this data is being picked from the source, this is being picked from the source. So all are basically connected to the source. So if I close this now, if I right click on my sheet table and I duplicate and I go back to my query dependency, then I change the layout again, you can see that my sheet table is also referencing the source, because it's been duplicated. And these are the ways all other tables are being created. They are being created, all these tables are being created because they picked from the source. Now if you click here also, our sales fact table also has reference from the source, but however our sales fact table is being linked together with our segment table and product category table. Now let me show you that. If you come to this place, if I close this now and I click on sales fact table, if you look at all the transformation steps here, you will discover that there were some forms of merge that has been done here. For instance, if you click here now, you'll see that my ship mode is being merged with my sales fact table. This is my sales fact, this is my ship table. If you also click the merge here, you'll see that my customer table is being merged with my sales fact table. And if you also click here, you'll see that I have to refresh this. If you also click here, you'll see that my segment is also being merged with my sales fact table. And if I click OK, so if I come to my query dependencies here, you'll see that, and I change the layout, I just want us to understand what I'm trying to do. You discover that everything is being picked from the source. Now what really happened here that they are all referencing here is that if you look at my segment table, if you look at my product category table, they are being picked from the source. Product category, they are being picked from the source, and they are being merged to this sales fact table. They're also being picked from the source. But when you get to my 6 fact table here, what happened here was that everything here, you see that the tables are being matched together. I think I've showed you the other time they are being matched together. Each of these tables, they are being matched together with each of these dimensions. However, if you get to the segment table here, the segment table here is a duplication, is duplicated after they've been merged. The segment table, if you look at the steps here, you can see the steps here. We have few steps here. In the product category here, we have few steps here. But if you come to the segment category, we have a lot of steps here. And these steps is because after these dimensions has been merged with the facts, we now created what? Created a segment. We duplicated the 6 fact table to create a what? To create a segment table, and we apply transformation. Now what this tells me is that this segment table was something afterthought. So which means that all this table, the ship, product category, customer table, has been created and has been merged with the 6 fact table. And then later on, maybe the person that worked, the previous Power BI developer that worked on this project now realized that there needs to be a segment table. So the person now duplicated this and then applied some forms of transformation. And if you see here, you see that we have all the other IDs there, the product categories ID. Then from here, you see that other steps have been applied to remove other columns, add index, rename the column, and then we now have our segment table. So the question is, how did I know about this? Is basically I get to know about this as a result of what I have here, my query dependencies. So I'm going to be explaining the 4 aspects of query dependencies as we move on in this course. Now the first aspect that we need to understand is what we call the direct dependency. This happens when one query depends on another by referencing it. If query B is built on using query A, that is basically what direct dependencies is about. So query A is modified or deleted to get query B, and all are not. Or you extract your data by referencing from in query B by referencing query A. Now how this works is that when you come to Power BI here, you see now this is not really difficult to know. You see all these steps that we have here, they are direct dependencies. Why? Because for me to get each of these, or for me to arrive at this table I have here as a whole, there were a series of steps, and these steps really depend on themselves. These particular steps depend on this depend on this depend on this, and this depend on this. So which means that any break in any of the steps will definitely affect the other. So this is a very good example of direct dependency, whereby in simple time, what that simply means is that how I arrive at this table here, the last step here is a result of the previous steps which I have applied, is directly depending on this, and any break in any of this could definitely affect the query as a whole, or affect the data. Now the next thing we have here also is what we call the indirect dependencies. These are queries that don't reference any other queries, and they pull directly from source. Now what this helps you to do is just to pull your data from the source into Power BI. That's what the indirect dependencies does. So they stand there on their own and they don't depend on anything. So whenever you come to your Power Query here, now if you look at all these steps here, the only step that stand on its own is the source. The source is this is an indirect query dependencies. Is the source. It stands on its own. It has no reference. You see, it also stands on its own for all this. So which means that this data is being referenced to the source. This 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 is being referenced to the source. Now, if you come to our query dependencies here, and I change my layout from left to right, you see that all this table has been picked from the source. When I click the source, you see this is picked from the source. This is from the source and this segment is a duplicate. We duplicated it from the sales file table, which is also picking from the what, from the source. So all the data set here is being picked from the what, from the source. And if you come to our steps here, it is really obvious that the only steps that stands on its own is the source. So the only thing about indirect dependencies is that it picks the source, it picked data from the source, and then it kept it in what, in Power BI vertical engine. Now the third one which we have is what we call chain dependency. When multiple queries are linked together in a sequence, that's chain dependency. Query A is dependent on query B, and query B is dependent on query C. Now the issue here is that if there's any break in the chain, that means that it's going to affect the what, the data. For instance, that means that if there's a something happens to query A, you can be sure that query B will be affected. And if something happens to query B, you can be sure that query C is affected. So if one query in the chain breaks, all dependent query will fall. Now let's see how this works. So if I come to my word Power Query here, and I click this, then I come here also, I change the layout left to right. I just like this layout because it helps me to understand the data very well. Now if you see this particular, now we don't have, you can see from here when we click on the source, this is dependent on this is dependent on this, everything is being picked from the source. So if I'm going to close it now, so let's create a duplicate, let's create a reference to this. If I click on ship and I click what, reference, so I have ship 2, and I come to Query Dependencies, and then I come here and I click left to right. So let's look at ship 3. Now for ship 3, now you can see that when I click here, you can see ship 3. Ship 3 is solely depending on what, on the ship table here. It's been referencing this table here, such that whatever happened to this, you can see ship 2, I duplicated, is picked from the source. But however, this is depending on this, such that whatever happens to this will definitely affect this. Now if I close it here and I try to delete this, you can see the query shipped cannot be deleted because it's referencing by another query. So which means that now this particular query is referencing this, my ship 3 is referencing this. Now let me delete this again. If I delete this again, let me delete the ship 2 again, so that we know the difference between the two. I come to query dependency. Now this is my table once again. Please pay attention. My table once again. Everything is being picked from the source. Now if I come to ship here, and I click duplicate, the reference will be from the source, and I change the layout from left to right. This is also from the source. You can see ship 2 is from the source. However, if I reference it, there's going to be a chain from my source to ship 2 and to the table. So if I come to this ship again and I right click and I click what, reference, so which means that this table 3 is dependent on this, and I come to query dependency and I click left to right. Then if I click this, you can see the connection. This is the connection. So there's a chain here telling me that this is dependent on this and this is dependent on this, and that is the chain dependency. From here, I see that what this shows me here is that the chain from the source here is that everything is being picked from the source, from the sales file table also. It tells me that everything is linked to the source. However, you can see this stands on no, this does not get connected with this. because I did not create any merge with this. But when I click here, this then shows me that this particular table is being what? There's a chain from the source to the ship to this what? To the ship 3, which I reference. And if I click it also, I see that this is depending on the what? On the source. If I click on the sales fact table, all these other table here are being connected to the sales fact table. Remember I showed you they were being merged together and being connected to the what? To the sales fact table. However, my ship 3 is being referenced from ship 2 and ship and ship is being connected to what? To the source. And also my ship 2 is being duplicated from ship and is being picked from what? From the source. So that is that about chain dependency. The next one we have, which is the third one, is the external dependency. Now, basically, this simply relies on external data sources like SQL Server, Excel, a player. Now, basically they are query that rely on external sources, and which this means that if there is any change in the external sources, the data becomes available. If there's a problem from the sources, the data becomes what? Unavailable. Now, let me show you how that works also. So, for instance, let's say that this is speaking from a source, and this is the source. So, if the data is being moved away from the source, you can be sure that it's going to be affected. It's going to affect your report, especially if you want to refresh if there's an update. So, what this shows is that our data here, or what we see here, is being picked from the source. Now, like I said from the beginning, having an understanding of this really helps you to be able to optimize your query. It helps you to be able to optimize your report. It also helps you to be able to understand what has been done previously so that you can make the right decision. It helps you to be able to find where the error is coming from if your report is not loading. And that's just the beauty about query dependency. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope to see you some other time. Thank you.